Welcome back, and today we're gonna see what would happen if Ross Perot did 10% better back in 1992. So let's start off with the reddest part in the entire country for the 2nd District of Nebraska. Yep, you heard that right. The 2nd District would be by far the reddest part of the country, technically. It would go to Bush Sr. barely by, I think, a margin of 12.46%. and would be the only safe electoral vote for Bush. And let's go to Bill Clinton, so it should not be a surprise that Arkansas would still be a safe state, even though it would drop down to 48% for Bill Clinton and 30% for Bush. It still would be a safe win for Bill Clinton. And now for Illinois, if you haven't yet seen how I do this, I take a 5% from Bill Clinton and 5% for Bush equally, and that's how we're getting the margins. And for Illinois, it is closer, but still Ross Perot does not have the support in Illinois, even if you give him 10+%. And moving to the East Coast, so I mean, let's just stay in the Rust Belt for a second. So West Virginia, not that much would happen. Ross Perot would get almost 26%, but that still would not be enough. And for Maryland, the issue for Ross Perot, once you get more to this seaboard area, he does not get his usual support, so not a change in there. And for DC, the District of Columbia would still be a safe Democrat win for Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton got 84% here. And for the last safe state for Bill Clinton, that would be New York. So New York, it still would be the same margin in our timeline by 25.8%, I think, or I should say 15.8%. Yep, that's correct. So still a Democrat win here. That's it for the safe states. So let's go to the likely states. And because we have not talked about Ross Perot, let's go talk about Maine. So Maine's 2nd District. As you can see, Ross Perot would get 43.20% against Bill Clinton's 32.60%. With this boost to Ross Perot, that means he would win here almost by a safe margin in the 2nd District, and he wins here by almost 11%. I think it's 10.6%, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, for the Maine at large, so Maine at large is a similar story, and here he would win here, still by a likely margin, although it wouldn't be a double-digit win for Ross Perot. I think it's something like 6 or 7%. And yeah, that's it for the likely states for Ross Perot. And let's go to Bill Clinton's. Oh wait, I got that order wrong, so let's go first of all for George H. Walker Bush. Not much would change in some of these states like North Dakota, where he would win. He would win there, but it would drop, of course, below that 12% margin. And for Nebraska, this is a really funny one. So I should say Nebraska at large and the 3rd District of Nebraska would weirdly be likely, even though the 2nd District would be the only safe electoral vote for George Bush. As you can see, Ross Perot would do quite well in more of these. Not overall, he would do better in the state. And the 3rd District, which is more rural and more prairie, and that's where Ross Perot really appealed towards. He would do there quite well, and he would be enough to drop the margins there too likely. And let's go. This shouldn't be a surprise. I think Indiana does it change much? I think Indiana would be a margin of 6.1% still, and for these southern states, Ross Perot had barely any appeal towards these states, so it shouldn't be a surprise that nothing changes here. And that's it for the likely states for George H. Walker Bush. And for Bill Clinton, California would be likely, Hawaii would be likely, New Mexico would be likely. I think those states right there, they would drop a slight bit. I do think, if you can see right here, Ross Perot would get 30% and Bill Clinton would get 41%, so barely a likely state. Hawaii you can't see well, I mean, whatever, let's just go here for a second. So Hawaii, it would be Bill Clinton would get 43% there, and nothing would change actually. I don't know why. Yeah, it would be the same margin of barely a likely state and 11%. And New Mexico, same story, wouldn't change at all. And let's go to the Rust Belt. So for Iowa, Missouri, and Michigan, of course. So Iowa, funnily enough, Iowa was one of these states that really Ross Perot didn't do as well as what most would think. And Ross Perot would still come in 3rd place. And for Missouri, Perot would do way better compared to Iowa, and he would get 31% against Bush's 28%, so he does narrow the margin slightly. And Michigan, 29%. Barely isn't able to get a second place though. And yeah, so Missouri, Iowa, and Michigan would be likely. And before I forget, for Pennsylvania, Ross Perot would not do any better there, so it'd still be a likely state. To the East Coast, for Delaware, 30%. Barely Ross Perot is able to get second place in Delaware, but it's really not a big change. And for the East, I should say the Northeast, funnily enough, he does get a lot of support here. He does get second place, and here in Connecticut, he gets second place in Rhode Island as well, and he even gets second place in Massachusetts because I think it has to do something with Bush really doing poorly here, even though Connecticut was almost his second home. Second place for Perot in the Northeast still, and we'll talk about New Hampshire later on. So he does quite well, and even in really deepish blue states, which is interesting and just shows you how bad of a state the GOP appeal was here, and it still is though, even with Bush. So, and that's it for the likely states. So for the lean states, let's start off this time with George H. Walker Bush. So South Dakota, yeah, sorry about that. So South Dakota would be a lean state, so it would still be quite close. Bush would get 35% and Perot would get 31%, so 4% win, I should say. Perot gets third place, so no difference there. For Texas, Perot still isn't able to get second place in Texas, which it is quite interesting because it is his home state, so that is a quite big of a now. For Oklahoma, let's go there. Weirdly enough, he does get second place, even though Bill Clinton is from the neighboring state of Arkansas, so I am surprised about that one. For the second district of Nebraska, so Nebraska, I should say the first one, I'm used to saying second district, so for the first one, it would drop barely a couple percentages for George Bush, but he still wins there, although by a lean margin. For Florida would still be the same margin in our timeline. And what else? So South Carolina and Virginia. These are southern states that really rejected Ross Perot, so the margins would still be the same as ours. And before I forget, for Utah as well would actually be really interesting. So Ross Perot already got second place in 1992 IRL, and this will drop to 38% for Bush and 37% for Perot. So I think this is barely a lean state. I think it's like 1.05 or something like that. I'm not sure. I think it would be 1.02%. So yeah, so that's it for all the the lean states for Ross Perot. And moving back to Bill Clinton, the West Coast, these states would all drop down except for California to lean D. Yep, lean D right there. So these would be within 5% for Bill Clinton, but he still does win them, of course. Colorado, I actually have to double check this one. So Colorado, Perot would get second place, but that would not be enough. And Bill Clinton would win here by a lean margin within, I think, 2.5%. For Louisiana, so Louisiana, there's no changes there because Ross Perot had no appeal. And I mean, it should be noted that really the main one here winning was going to be Bill Clinton. For the Rust Belt, so for these Rust Belt states, for Minnesota, Wisconsin, Ross Perot actually had a lot of support in Minnesota, and he would overtake Bush winning there, and not winning there, but he would be able to make a major tactical win, and Minnesota would be below 5%. Wisconsin, I think Bush would still prevail there in second place, and Minnesota, I think, would be a Clinton win of 4.52%. And for other Rust Belt states and a bit of a southern states here, Ohio 30, 33, not a difference there. Same thing for Kentucky and Tennessee, 35, 30. So all these states would still be the same margin in our timeline. Blah blah. There we go. And for the final lean state, for Bill Clinton, New Jersey. Same thing, he really did poorly. Ross Perot did poorly in New Jersey, so there wouldn't be a difference there. Still lean D. And now, for the lean states for Ross Perot, let's start off. I don't know. I could go to Alaska, but you know what? Let's go to the 1st district of Maine. So the 1st district of Maine. So I was saying this would be in the 1st district of Maine. It would be a Ross Perot win of 3.2%. So yeah, it's not as much as compared to the Maine at large and the 2nd district, but still a decent one for him. And this map and video does remind me of like what would happen if Ross Perot didn't drop out. This could very well have been the map. And now for Alaska, a state that he really wanted to win, Ross Perot. If we go to Wikipedia right there, Wikipedia does say that George Bush barely won here, and so this will mean Bush gets 34% while Ross Perot gets 38%. So yeah, that would almost be a likely state for Ross Perot, but barely a lean state. Moving on for Nevada. Nevada was really one of the best states, not one of the better states, so he would win there by a lean margin as well. I think it would be within 4%. And for Montana, another prairie state, for Ross Perot, it would be another win for him in that state by, of course, within 5%. For Kansas, so Kansas, a neighboring state to a lot of these candidates, you could say, Perot would get 36.99% against Bush's 33.88%, which would be enough for him to win here by a lean margin. And that's it for the lean states, so let's go to the tilt states. Starting with Bush, so North Carolina, because it's a southern state, Perot would not be able to make a dent here, so the same margin is in our timeline, and Bush barely wins there by a tilt margin. Which is a similar story for Georgia. Georgia, no difference there because, I mean, he had no support to the really religious right, so Georgia would be a tilt win for Bill Clinton. And let's go to the West Coast for a second. So Arizona would be one of the closest states, and Ross Perot would actually win Arizona by a tilt margin win of 0.32%. So yeah, real one of the most surprising ones for me in here. And for the Northeast, in New Hampshire, I'm back. This would actually be a lean state for it. Bill Clinton barely by a margin of 1.2%. And for the last state, so Idaho, Wyoming would be really close. Wyoming would not be as close as Arizona, but if I'm not mistaken, it would be a Perot win by, I think, 0.95%, so it's barely a tilt state. And for the last one, for Idaho, Idaho would be the closest state, I think, in this election. Bush would get 37.03% against Ross Perot's 37.05%, so this would be a Ross Perot win of 0.02%. So as you can see, Ross Perot did 10% better back in 1992, and basically he did not drop out. This could be the map. He would get 35 electoral votes, Bush would get 144 electoral votes, and Bill Clinton would win with 359 electoral votes. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for the next video.